Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Dylan, and in this video, I have compiled 5 key facts I think you need to know before the 2025 SAT papers happen. Before I dive into them, I want to give a quick shout out to our friend Sophie B. Sophie B does amazing work with the company Learning by Questions to produce blog after blog after blog, and she intricately goes through all of the previous SAT papers, all of the previous results, the types of questions that come up, everything you need to know in order for you and your class and your children to absolutely smash the SAT papers. And this is where I got all of my information from. So down in the description, you can take a look at the links. This is in no way sponsored. This is just a fantastic resource that we use constantly that I think would be helpful to summarize and pass on to you in this video. So let's start with fact 1. Fact 1 is that it is called the Key Stage 2 SATs for a reason. It's very common that you hear people say the Year 6 SATs, and that is a misrepresentation of what this test is. This test is designed to test the entirety of Key Stage 2. That's Year 3, Year 4, Year 5, and Year 6. And with that in mind, it's really important to know that going into the test that over 50% in your maths paper, for example, in this fact, it contains questions from Year 3, Year 4, or Year 5 curriculum. Let me just say that again. You could not do anything in Year 6, and technically, children would have been exposed to questions that covers the content that you did in Year 3, Year 4, and Year 5. That is a fact. And we can literally see here the percentages of questions from the Year 3, 4, and 5 curricula. We can see in 2017, it started off at about 58%, and all the way through, it hovers in the 50s. In 2022, it was 63% of maths questions were from Year 3, 4, and 5. We finishing off in 2024, which is about our average, I'd say, about 56%. So a huge chunk of these SATs papers are from objectives that we teach children in Year 3, 4, and 5. So it's not just a test of what you learn in Year 6. Fact 2. Now this is kind of linked. You only need very often just over 50% to pass. And when I say pass, I mean meet what we call age expected standard, which is something you may have heard of before in school. 2023 was actually the lowest percentage needed to achieve the expected standard that we've seen. It was 51% in maths, and I'm actually going to add in another number here, which is 48%, because that was the pass mark required to get through to expected standard in reading comprehension in 2023. You didn't even need half marks to get there. And what I love about these blogs that Sophie produces is these amazing tables we can see here, and we can look at the top. Key Stage 2 maths SATs, percentage required to pass, 55, 52. It's hovering around the low 50s. In 2023, it was 51%. It moved again in 2024, and then we don't know what it will be in 2025 yet. We have no idea. But from past experience and what we can see in the data here, we can extrapolate and say it will probably be between 50 and 55%. Now, if we look down at the reading comp, you can see that's where that 48% number came from for passing in 2023. Traditionally, it is above that. So would I expect to see that again? No. Again, in 2024, it went up again. It wasn't quite as low as 48%. So I would say this was an anomaly, and I'd be aiming across the board in the 50s. Somewhere in there will be the pass mark. So if you can aim to achieve 60% plus, you're looking at that expected standard. Knowing that can help you unlock how to get there and what questions you can prioritize for sure. Let's move on to fact 3. You could leave every single Year 6 question and still pass the test. Now, in this case, I absolutely do not recommend doing this. This is not me giving advice. This is just a powerful piece of knowledge to know that, okay, if we're talking about combining fact 1 and 2 here, if you need only just about 50% to pass the paper, and if just over 50% of the paper is from Year 3, 4, and 5, that tells me something. It tells me that I could pass these papers just by imparting my knowledge from Year 3, Year 4, and Year 5. And look at this amazing table. This just highlights it. Percentage required to pass, and then percentage of questions from Year 3, 4, and 5. You can see in 2016, the percentage from 3, 4, 5 was greater than the pass mark. So we could pass this year just by answering 3, 4, and 5. Same again in 2017. In 2018, a couple of percentage points. We'd have to sneak into some year 6 content there. Again here, 2019, very, very, very similar. So we'd have to do a little bit of year 6 knowledge if we wanted to go through this route, which I don't recommend, by the way. Look at this in 2022. My goodness me. 63% of the paper was from year 3, 4, and 5. You could comfortably pass the SAT paper, and I'm going to say Key Stage 2 SATs, remember, because it's not Year 6 SATs, it's Key Stage 2 SATs. And then down here, again, so much bigger in 2023. So in general, the point we're making here is, if you put all of that hard work in 3, 4, and 5, those foundations are solid, and you have a really good understanding of them, Year 6 content is added to that. It is a long, old journey. And I would not recommend identifying a Year 6 question and saying, I don't need to do it. Absolutely not. But what this is really showing us that this is absolutely not a Year 6 test. It is a Key Stage 2 test. And that is very powerful knowledge, thinking about when and what to revise and go over. So let's take a look now at fact 4. Some strands will come up more than others. What do I mean by this? Well, let's firstly take a look at maths. So maths we can split up into strands, and you can see them down here labeled as content domains. Number and place value, calculations. FDP stands for fractions, decimals, and percentages. It goes all the way down. And what you'll notice is this. Over the years, we can see a bit of a move. In 2016, you can see there are some 17s, 17s, 15s, 15s, 12s, and then the rest are a bit lower, but it's evenly spread out. Now what I want you to do is look at 2023. Look at this breakdown here. These numbers jump out straight away. 33%. Wow. 1/3 of the paper. Look at the year before. 38%. This is calculations. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. The building blocks of maths and being able to do maths. 33% of these questions came from that content domain, or you might want to call it a strand. Look underneath. 25%, a quarter, came from fractions, decimals, and percentages. Same in 2022, same in 2019. We're seeing a pattern. Huge chunks of this test from calculations and fractions, decimals, and percentages. Let's just add these up quickly. 33 plus 25, that gives me 58%. I've essentially passed this paper if I just answer calculation, fraction, decimal, percentage questions. That is crazy. And if we add in place value, that gets us to 68%. We are well above the pass mark. So it's all about thinking, what do I need to prioritize? For example, if you're in a situation where you're not particularly confident with the fractions, decimals, and percentage questions, and you're also not particularly confident with position and direction questions, realistically, which one is going to be worth more of your time to try and improve on in order to boost the mark and essentially pass this test? Well, it's obviously going to be fractions, decimals, and percentages. Position and direction is only worth 2% of the available marks. Now, look, in general, I don't think it's a very healthy attitude to just think, well, tests need this, so I'm going to do that. But if we are really breaking down now how best to use our time, and we don't want to spend our entire lives doing revision on every single strand ever, this is very powerful to know. If we know this information, we can prioritize, and it means we can get on and do other stuff like our hobbies and things we enjoy, as well as our academia. Okay, so this is about having a balanced lifestyle. If you're going to plow extra time into improving your scores, be tactical about it. Go for fractions, decimals, and percentages, calculations, number, and place value. The rest can always fall into place later on. Something else I want to do now is look at English. So we talked about strands. In this sense, I'm going to talk again about content domains, because we can talk about types of reading comprehension question. And you can see down here, 2A, 2B, all the way down to 2H. These are different types of content domain for questions from reading comprehension. And we can match them up here, which is why I put this table in as well. Big thank you again to Sophie and Learning by Questions for this amazing chart, which makes it so clear. 2A, for example, give and explain the meaning of words in context. The meaning of words. Cool. We know that's going to be big. I think what we should do here is look at the different years. We can see from 17 all the way up to last year, 24. Let's look at 24, for example, then. What percentages were big? Oh my goodness me. 44% of questions were 2D. Let's go and see what 2D was. 2D is making inferences. So being able to explain and justify what's going on based on evidence from the text. Nearly half of the marks in the reading comprehension was through inference. My goodness. Hayden has done so many videos on our channel about reading comprehension. I would advise going to watch them if you want a bit of help on inference, retrieval, word meaning, and everything like that. The next huge one here, 38%, is 2B. And here 2B is to retrieve and record information. So altogether, we have 82% of marks available in the reading comprehension are from retrieval and inference. That is astoundingly high. That means that if we focus on just these two things here, and I say just, these are the most important strands. To be able to retrieve information is to go into a text and find it. That's very, very important. Inference is like the next level. Not only do we need to go into a text to find information, sometimes we're giving it in a question, which is nice. We then need to extrapolate and explain and work things out based on it. An example of inference might be, in the text, little Johnny is described as crying. Okay, that might be your inference, your ability to work something out from that perhaps he's upset. Or maybe was he happy? Were they happy tears? That's where your knowledge of the text comes in. That's what inference is. Working, explaining, and justifying things out. So retrieval and inference are huge. And this is something I need to highlight to you. 2E, 2F, and 2G in 2024 did not come up at all. I think we need to look at what they are. 2E is predict. 2F is to identify and explain how information related to contribute the meaning as a whole. So that's the whole text. And then finally here, 2G, identify and explain how meaning is enhanced through choice of words and phrases. They did not come up. You could have done hours and hours and hours of revision on these three, and it's not even tested in the test. So in this situation where we have the SATs test and we're trying to show off how good we are at reading, if we're trying to make the most of our time so we can still have a life outside of education, going to play football, going to do our hobbies, enjoying ourselves with our family, this is what we need to focus on. Retrieval and inference are huge. And then if you want a third one, do word meaning. Word meaning, retrieval, inference. Those are the ones that come up more than anything. And knowing this fact is going to help us prepare for this test in the best possible way. Let's move on now to our fact 5. Some things have not come up at all in recent years, and this is very much inspired by what I have just seen from that last fact. I saw that and I thought, what else hasn't come up? What else have we not seen in a while? And more importantly, what does that mean for the future? In those examples we just looked at, those 2E, F, and G actually was 0 or 2% for a long time. So we can safely assume they're not going to be a huge chunk of the next text. However, we do have other things that haven't come up in a while that we might start to think, okay, does that mean it's due to come up? Could it even potentially come up in the 2025 papers? And this is where knowing this information helps us to work these things out. Again, I've got a lovely chart here. So looking at English, I've just zoomed in on the actual texts because in the comprehension paper for SATs in year 6, I say year 6, it's Key Stage 2, remember, Key Stage 2 SATs. We can see here across the 3 different texts, we have either fiction text, non-fiction text, or poetry text. Straight away, you're probably noticing this. There's only one poetry text that has come up in the last 6 years. That is 18 texts across 6 years, and only once in 2019 has poetry come up. Now we can look at this one of two ways. We can say, oh, well, maybe they're kind of phasing it out and they're not really testing that anymore in the comprehension. But there's another very popular way of looking at this and thinking, is poetry due to come up? Could poetry appear then in the 2025 paper as it's not been in there for so long? And it's a big part of our reading comprehension skill is to understand the poem. So it's something to consider. Again, I would be looking at this and thinking, okay, I'm going to read some poetry and try and understand it and see the types of questions we get asked. Because for poetry, usually the texts are shorter. There are fewer words in a poem quite often, but it's harder to understand. Lots of figurative language, metaphors, similes, inference, word meaning. All of these tricky questions can come out of it. So whilst there's less to get through, there's often trickier questions to do. So I'd be looking at that and thinking, let's practice a bit of poetry. But flipping it again, looking at maths, for example, one thing that's not come up in ages is Roman numerals. It's a part of the curriculum. It's in the Key Stage 2 curriculum. It could well be tested. It would be fair. If Roman numerals came up in the SATs papers for maths this year, it would be completely fair. But will it? I mean, even if it does, it's only going to be one question. Okay? So is it worth plowing our time into? We can come to different conclusions. There's been barely any poetry. I'd say probably maybe there might be poetry coming up then because it's important. There's been barely any Roman numerals. It's probably likely it might not come up. And even if it does, it's going to be a small chunk. Whereas if poetry comes up, that's going to be 12 to 14 questions, a huge chunk of your reading comprehension score. So it's just about knowing this information and balancing what's worth doing. I want you to just very quickly signpost this, okay? So this is where I've got it from. I'm going to put all the links down below in the description. So go and check them out if you want a more detailed analysis, because they are so good, learning by questions. And these blogs by Sophie B, my goodness me, as a teacher, so useful. Now, I know this is top 5 facts, but I've managed to sneak in a 6th one. So just bear with me. The SATs are more of an indication for school than for you personally. So the individual, if we are feeling stressed or worried about SATs, we absolutely need to just take a step back and just think about what's important to us, because at the end of the day, they're going to have not much of an impact on your life, okay? There's so much more you're going to go through in your life that will be able to define you. A, that's outside of education, and B, that's in education itself, okay? So it's not worth stressing over. It's way more of an indication for the school, and the school will be represented by data as a whole, not by individuals per se. So it's not something to get ourselves in a tiz about. We can practice, we can revise, we can try and do our best. It's always best to do that, but it's not worth getting into a jam about. It will be fine. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you again with some more videos in the future, and I'll see you soon.